There's a strange contradiction in the iPhone 18 Pro leaks right now. On one side, this looks like a refinement year, smaller visual changes, familiar design language, nothing that screams new phone from across the rooms. But on the other side, the hardware rumors are getting unusually serious. And what caught my attention was the timing. According to Fix Focus Digital, the iPhone 18 Pro models have now entered the latest stage of production testing, with manufacturing validation beginning ahead of September's launch. At first, that sounds minor, very supply chain, very thanks for the update spreadsheet. But this is where it gets interesting. This is the stage where Apple activates production tooling and validates parts of its assembly lines. Historically, this is also when leaks start accelerating because once the hardware is locked in, it gets much harder to keep everything contained. So the story here isn't just that the iPhone 18 Pro is getting closer, it's that the shape of Apple's next move is starting to lock in too. And the clearer pattern here is this: Apple doesn't seem to be chasing a dramatic redesign. It looks like the company is concentrating upgrades in the parts of the experience people actually notice after a few weeks of ownership: camera behavior, battery life, connectivity, display refinement, and if the reports hold, price stability. That doesn't look accidental. The camera is the biggest example of that. According to Ming-Chi Kuo, the iPhone 18 Pro models are set to receive variable aperture on the primary lens. Now, I'll be honest, at first that sounds like one of those features that people hear once, nod very seriously, and then immediately go back to asking whether the zoom is better. But variable aperture matters. It means the camera can physically adjust how much light reaches the sensor. In darker environments, it can open wider for better low light shots. In brighter conditions, it can narrow to improve sharpness and control exposure. And more importantly, it gives Apple real control over depth of field. So instead of relying purely on computational tricks to fake background blur, the phone can create more natural separation optically. What this tells me is Apple may be pushing the iPhone camera a little further back toward hardware-led photography, not just smarter image processing. That's a meaningful shift. And then there's the other rumor still hovering over this phone, a possible 200 megapixel primary sensor. Nothing is confirmed just yet. That part matters. But if Apple combines a 200 megapixel primary sensor with variable aperture, that would represent one of the biggest camera hardware upgrades we've seen on an iPhone in years. And that's when this stops feeling like a normal yearly refresh. Quick pause because today's video is in partnership with BetterHelp. One of the points in the article that actually lands really well is that most New Year's resolutions fade by February because real change usually doesn't come from trying to become someone completely different overnight. It comes from small, consistent habits that build over time, the kind that still hold up when motivation dips. The article frames therapy the same way, not as a quick fix or a one-time breakthrough, but as a steady habit that gives you space to understand yourself better, recognize patterns in your thinking, and build healthier responses to stress, relationships, and everyday challenges. There's also a personal example around sleep. Improving it didn't happen overnight, and it took months of dedication to stick to a routine before any real improvement showed up. BetterHelp is described as making that process feel straightforward. You fill out a questionnaire, you can be matched with a therapist in as little as a couple of days. They match you based on your preferences and their clinical experience. And if it doesn't feel like the right fit, you can switch therapists at no extra cost. The article also says over 6 million people have used BetterHelp, making it one of the largest therapy platforms available. And if you're ready to make your mental health and growth a real focus this year, the offer mentioned here is 10% off your first month through the link in the description or at betterhelp.com/ttechnology. Now, back to the phone. Battery life is also getting attention, but in a very Apple way. According to Digital Chat Station, the iPhone 18 Pro Max could increase to somewhere between 5,100 and 5,200 milliamps. On paper, that's only a modest bump from the predecessor's 5,088 milliamps. So, no, this is not a fireworks upgrade. This is a very Apple upgrade. But the raw number doesn't tell the full story. The article also expects an A20 Pro chip, Apple's in-house C2 modem, and new N2 process architecture. So the actual gain may come from combining a slightly higher capacity battery with much bigger efficiency improvements. And if that holds, it should translate into noticeably longer real-world battery life. What caught my attention there was how small the battery increase sounds in isolation. Then the context changes it. Because if Apple can improve endurance through efficiency instead of just adding bulk, that suggests the company is still trying to protect design priorities while improving daily use. That likely isn't random. The front of the phone is evolving too, just not in the way earlier reports suggested. Earlier reports pointed to a top left punch hole camera with under-display Face ID. But according to Mark Gurman and several other well-known sources, that is apparently not going to be the final design. Instead, the latest expectation is under-display Face ID positioned centrally alongside a punch hole selfie camera. The result is a reduced dynamic island, not removed, just smaller. At first, that sounded a little underwhelming. Then it started to look more strategic, because this feels like the logical transition step before Apple eventually removes it entirely in a future generation. So the design story here isn't reinvention, it's controlled subtraction. On colors, Apple has reportedly been testing burgundy, brown, and purple, but numerous reports now say the company has settled on deep red. The article describes it as somewhere between burgundy and product red, darker, more refined. Updated renders were created based on those reports so viewers could get a better feel for the look, although the exact shade is still unknown. As for the other colors, there's no confirmation yet. Blue and white seem likely judging by last year, and personally, I'm still hoping purple makes the cut. Even though deep red is probably the one I'd actually go for, one of the most interesting rumors this year, though, may not be camera or color, it's connectivity. Reports suggest Apple could introduce real-time satellite communication with the iPhone 18 series. So not just emergency SOS, but actual voice and data connectivity via satellite. The article describes it as 5G over satellite, meaning coverage from space rather than relying on ground-based towers. That's a big shift if it happens. And this is the part that changes the context. Online discourse optimizes specs. Most people optimize comfort and predictability. For users in low signal areas or very remote places, that would be a significant upgrade. What this tells me is Apple may be trying to make connectivity itself part of the premium story, not just camera quality and raw performance. Then there's price, which might quietly be one of the smartest parts of this whole strategy. Despite all of these reported changes, multiple supply chain sources suggest Apple is focused on cost management this year. That means the iPhone 18 Pro and Pro Max could remain at the same price point as last year. If that holds true, these upgrades become a lot more compelling, because a refinement cycle is much easier to appreciate when the price doesn't rise with it. And that brings us to the lineup itself. The iPhone 18 Pro is expected to get a 6.3-inch LTPO Super Retina X DROLED display running at 1 to 120 Hz. Resolution is expected to remain 2622 by 1206, but with higher peak brightness, thinner bezels, and a smaller dynamic island. On the front, it's rumored to get a new 42 megapixel selfie camera. On the back, the Pro is expected to move to a triple camera system with variable aperture, a 48 megapixel main sensor, a 48 megapixel ultra wide, and a new 64 megapixel periscope offering 5 times to 10 times optical zoom. All three are rumored to use stacked sensors for faster readout and better color depth. It's expected to run the A20 Pro chip manufactured on a 2 nanometer node with 12 gigs of RAM and up to 1 terabyte of storage. Battery size is expected around 4,300 milliamps for the eSIM-only model, with big improvements to fast charging. Connectivity includes 5G, Wi-Fi 7, Bluetooth 6, ultra-wideband, and the new C2 modem. It's expected to ship with iOS 27 and start at £1,099 or $1,099. Then there's the iPhone 18 Pro Max. Apple's largest flagship model is expected to get a 6.9-inch LTPO Super Retina XDR OLED display with a listed resolution of 2868 by 320. It remains a 120 Hz display, but with record-breaking peak brightness and a smaller dynamic island. On the front, it gets the same 42 megapixel camera as the Pro. On the rear, we could see a 200 megapixel primary camera, a 48 megapixel ultra-wide, and a 64 megapixel telephoto, along with larger apertures and improved sensor readouts for better zoom and night shots. It runs the same A20 Pro chip with 12 gigs of RAM, but this time storage goes up to 2 terabytes. It also gets a much larger 5,200 milliamps battery for the eSIM-only model, with improvements to wired and wireless charging. Connectivity again includes 5G, Wi-Fi 7, Bluetooth 6, ultra-wideband, and Apple's C2 modem. It runs iOS 27 and is expected to launch around £1,199 in September 2026. And finally, the biggest swing in the article, the Apple iPhone Fold. This is described as Apple's most premium iPhone to date. It features a 5.5-inch external display for everyday use, paired with a 7.8-inch internal folding OLED display with a wide tablet-like aspect ratio. Both displays use punch hole cameras, with the external camera at the top center and the internal camera in the top left corner. And the standout claim here is that when it's unfolded, the internal display has no visible crease from any angle. That's not a small claim. The device is also said to measure just 9 millimeters thick when folded and 4.5 millimeters when unfolded, which would make it one of the thinnest book-style foldables ever. For the selfie camera, it's still unknown at the moment, but the external punch hole is likely to be an 18 megapixel multi-aspect selfie camera. On the rear, the Fold is expected to use a dual camera setup on a raised camera bar, with current rumors suggesting a 200 megapixel stacked primary camera paired with a 48 megapixel ultra-wide. The article also points to Apple's latest AI-powered video features driven by an upgraded neural engine. It's expected to run the A20 Pro chip with 12 gigs of RAM and up to 2 terabytes of storage. Battery is described as a dual battery system with an estimated combined capacity of around 5,600 milliamps, designed to deliver consistent all-day battery life despite the large internal display. Instead of Face ID, Apple is expected to integrate Touch ID into the power button positioned right above the camera modules. Connectivity includes 5G, Wi-Fi 7, Bluetooth 6, and ultra-wideband. It runs iOS 27 out of the box, is expected to launch in black and white, and pricing is estimated between $2,000 and $2,500, with a likely release window in September 2026. So here's the bigger pattern. For iPhone 17 Pro users, this probably won't be a must upgrade. The article is pretty fair about that. But for anyone on an older iPhone, especially something 3 or 4 generations back, this could be one of the strongest upgrade cycles in recent years, because what's revealing here isn't one flashy feature, it's the mix. Meaningful camera upgrades, better battery efficiency, refined display tech, potential satellite connectivity, likely stronger AI features as Apple continues trying to close the gap there. And all of it wrapped in a design language Apple apparently isn't trying to throw away. So we end up back where this started. The iPhone 18 Pro cycle may not be trying to look dramatically different. It may be trying to become harder to ignore. And now that production testing has begun, the leaks probably won't slow down. They'll speed up. Catch you next one. Peace out.